In high school, I competed in speech and debate, and this was a long time ago. At this point, it was like 26 years ago. But let me tell you about one of the most memorable speeches that I ever experienced. So we were sitting in a round, and the type of debate was called impromptu, which means that you get a topic, you have 1 minute to prep, and then you give a 5 minute speech. Um, so it's an acquired skill, right? And I'm sitting in the audience, and this young man is prepping his topic, and then all of a sudden he jumps up, he runs over to the teacher's desk that's in the classroom, because we're in a classroom. He jumps up onto the teacher's desk. I mean, full body jumps onto the teacher's desk. He stands up. So this is a young man standing up on the teacher's desk in the middle of a classroom, and he crows, a full body crow, like a rooster. And I was enraptured. I was like, what is this guy going to talk about? I mean, to this day, I still remember this guy jumping on the desk and crowing like a rooster. Uh, I will tell you, it was attention getting. And that is half of the purpose of an introduction, is to get your audience's attention. The second half he did not do so well about, which is to get your audience's attention so that they remember your topic and that they remember what you spoke about. And I have no idea what he spoke about. I spent the rest of the round wondering, what did the crow have to do with anything? When was the crow going to be relevant to the speech? I don't recall it ever being relevant to the speech. I'm pretty sure that I'm not the only one that felt that way. I feel pretty confident that all of the audience felt that way. All right, so we're going to talk about introductions. Or, how do you start this speech of yours that you're working on? And we're going to go over its parts and hopefully get you familiar so that you are ready to build high quality introductions that both engage the audience, get us paying attention, give you an opportunity to talk, open the window, if you will, but also help us remember meaningfully your topic so that 26 years from now, we're talking about a speech that we once heard and we can remember its content. Introductions are important because of the primacy effect. People tend to remember what they hear first. So the very first things out of your mouth, and when we get to conclusions, the very last things out of your mouth are often the most memorable portions of your speech. You can really mess up a lot of the middle if you do those portions well, which is why I strongly recommend you be very familiar with the first 30 seconds to 1 minute of your speech, because then you can make a lot of eye contact, you can gesture, you can really connect with the audience, and what they'll remember from your speech is how well that first minute connected with them. If you can do that for the first minute and the last minute of the speech, then everything else is going to seem like it was awesome. There are three purposes of an introduction. The first is to get the audience engaged in your speech, right? You want them to be listening. Think of it like opening a door or pulling back the curtains on the window, right? The speech is what's through the window or what's through the door, and the introduction just opens up that opportunity. You want us to get us engaged, though. You want to slow lead us to it. You do not want to start with the topic. Why? Because a million billion speeches have started with the topic. There's nothing interesting or engaging about that, right? And you don't want to start with your name. Ideally, if you're speaking, somebody has already introduced you. But in this class, even still, we're going to operate from the premise that the instructor knows our name. Don't start with your name. I mean, there's just like how many speeches in the world have started with, hi, my name is, right? Like a million. There's just nothing interesting about it. Think of it like a slow lead. If we already disagree with you or we're already uninterested, the attention getting portion, the very beginning of your speech, is your opportunity to kind of surprise us, to give us an option to get interested before we really know that you're talking about something we already disagree with or are already disinterested in. The second thing that you're going to do is establish some credibility for yourself. This is your opportunity to demonstrate that you know some of what you're talking about, that you're organized, and that you're prepared for the speech. And then the third is to lay out the speech organization. And that's because we want to know what's going to happen in this speech. Why are you giving the speech, and what is the speech going to cover? Those things help the audience feel a sense of certainty that you are prepared and therefore a credible speaker. There are 3 parts of every introduction. And look, there are different textbooks that will add parts, right? I mean, they could have like up to 5 or 6 parts of an introduction, but these are the 3 core elements of every introduction. First, an attention-getting strategy. Notice I said strategy, and that's because it is a thought-out way, a thought-out means of trying to get the audience interested in your topic, right? And then some explanation of what the strategy has to do with leading into the thesis. Why are you giving this speech? What are you talking about, and what do you want from the audience? Why are you giving this speech? And then a preview statement. What is going to happen in this speech? What are the things you're going to talk about? These are the 3 core elements that belong to every introduction. We're going to talk about them with just a little bit more depth. So much like the guy that crowed, your goal, the very first thing right out the gate, the very first element of any speech is to get the audience attention. We call this an attention-getting device or an attention-getting strategy. The goal is to get the attention of the audience so that they're listening to you, and then also to pique the interest of the audience. This is the key part that the guy that crowed didn't do, right? Because there was no interest in his topic. Nobody even had any idea what his topic is, but he certainly got our attention. Sometimes, because your attention getter is not readily apparent, like we don't really know what that has to do with the thesis, you have to have a connecting sentence, which reveals what the analogy that you were using, or the story, right, or the person of interest, whatever strategy or device you were using, we're going to talk about a bunch of them in a second, what does that have to do with your topic? What is the relationship to the topic? Sometimes you need a connecting sentence. And sometimes, honestly, it's super obvious what this has to do with your topic. If you're telling a super sad story about, somebody who got COVID-19, and then you go into a speech about COVID-19, we already kind of get the connection. But sometimes when you're talking about, ice cream, and you're like, oh, all these beautiful flavors of ice creams, and then you're like, now let's talk about hot air balloons. We don't really know, what did the ice creams have to do with the hot air balloons? And you have to explain, like, oh, the flavors of the ice cream are analogous to the many different types of hot air balloons. You have to provide us with a connector so that we understand what this attention-getting strategy has to do with our interest in this topic. Okay, so these are some of the attention-getting strategies, and they're not all of the strategies. Your textbook has a lot of strategies, but these are some of the best strategies, and you're going to do an activity related to these strategies where you watch 9 TED Talks, or the beginnings of 9 TED Talks, and you watch the strategies that they use. And TED speakers are professional speakers. They have been asked to speak, first of all, because of something spectacular that they've done or contributed to the world. And they have worked with a professional speech coach for 6 months to a year before they give the speech that you watch. So it's very polished, and they've definitely spent a bunch of time thinking about how to start the speech. All right, they use lots of different strategies, so I hope you'll enjoy them. So these are some of the strategies. I think these are the best strategies. I don't think that they're all the strategies, though. You could tell a story. We love human stories. We love to know things about the world that have characters and plots and dramatic twists and turns and surprise endings. We like when you start the story and it builds to a climax, and then that leads to the thesis of the speech, and then you return to the story at the end to finish it, and that's called the clincher. We really love that type of story. But any story, you could tell the whole story in the beginning as long as it's short and fits in the time for the speech. We like recent events. We really like when you talk about things that are happening in the world right now. You could talk about the protests. You could talk about COVID-19. You could talk, there's all sorts of various political events happening around the globe. The elections are getting ready to happen. There's lots of recent events you could talk about. You could even talk about something happening right now, like distance education, having our classes online, right? That's very recent because it literally applies to the moment that we're having. Or you could talk about historical events, right? So, one of my favorite historical events that I like to talk about is the assassination of JFK. I just think it was really fascinating. I've read a bunch about it. And so I like to talk about little details or little parts of that historical event, but there's like 1,000 little historical events you could talk about. Juneteenth, for example, the history of Juneteenth is right, historical event. Person of interest. Usually these are celebrities or people who've contributed greatly to the world, right? So you could talk about RBG or Neil deGrasse Tyson or Bob Ross or, there's like a million people that you could talk about here, right, that are person of interest stories, right? And those people get us interested in the larger topic, right? You could refer to previous speeches. So typically these are speeches of impact. So you could be like, oh, this speech was given on the steps of Congress, right? Or, you could talk about Greta Thunberg's speech before the UN on climate change, right? Or Malala's speech when she received her Nobel Peace Prize. These are previous speeches, and they have big impact. You could talk about a startling statistic, or I like to think of it really as a startling fact, because statistics are important. I mean, that's just the world in numerical value, but really just any fact that we didn't know that doesn't sound true, right? Like, did you know recently there was a treasure found in the United States? That's right. Forrest Fenn buried a $2 million treasure in the Rocky Mountains, and he wrote a poem to help people find it. And 4 people died looking for it, and it was recently found. And indeed, it did. It had $2 million in gold and jewels in it, which means it's probably only appreciated in value. Anyways, so that's a startling fact. And what makes it work is that it's fact that people don't know. It's unusual, it's novel, it's interesting, it goes against the grain of what we believe. You could use an analogy. You can compare two dissimilar things, right? One of my favorite analogies is politicians are like diapers. They both need changing, and for the same reason. And I love politicians because, I come from a debate background, but it's still really funny analogy. Right, so there's lots of analogies, right? Diapers and politicians are actually not the same, but the point is to make a poignant claim to similarity, right? Which is that sometimes they don't really know what they're talking about. They're full of it, if you will, and we should change them, right? We should change them. Anyways, you can start with a quotation. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. I really like antithesis. So that's one of the many types of quotations. There's a million quotations you can use. So you could use a quotation or whatever your favorite quotation is, right? And then you could ask a question. Engaging the audience with a question is a great way to start your speech. There are many, many different types of questions, as you'll see when you look through the activity that you're going to do. There are lots of different types of questions. So make sure you think about the question and that it really is leading in to your topic, and that it's not basically just like, so hey, what do you know about my topic? Because that's not a question that gets our attention. That's just your topic in question form. So do not do your topic in question form. All right, that is not ask a question. Okay, it is not your topic in a question format. All right. Think about the question you're asking the audience and how it engages them and leads into your topic. Okay, so the next part is a thesis. A thesis is a single statement, so a single sentence that succinctly, so clearly and easily, lets the audience know what this speech is about. Like, why are you giving us this speech? And so I think there's a really easy way to write your thesis, at least for this class, and you're welcome to make them more complicated if you want in other classes. But for this class, I need you to combine, see the formula right here, the specific purpose, and then add your topic, and that's your thesis statement. So if the specific purpose is to inform the audience, and then what are you informing them about? Now, what's your topic? Oh, well, my topic is about the newest Tesla model. Fine. So that means the thesis is, in this speech, I will inform you about the newest Tesla model, right? Specific purpose plus topic. Oh, in this speech, my plan is to get Black Lives Matter, on the tip of our tongue, right? I want everybody talking about it. Okay, fine. So we're going to take our specific purpose, that's called agenda setting, and then our topic, Black Lives Matter. So in this speech, my goal is to put on the agenda, right, on the social agenda of our lives, the Black Lives Matter movement. And that's our thesis, right? And there's like a million ways you can do this. So whatever your specific purpose is, maybe it's to persuade, right? And then what are you trying to persuade us about? I'm trying to persuade us to ban the declawing of animals. Fine. In this speech, I hope to persuade you to prevent animals from being declawed, right? Whatever your specific purpose is, plus your topic is your thesis. And it's a single sentence way to clearly and accurately let the audience know what this speech is going to be about and what you hope to accomplish in this speech. So I want to persuade you, and this is the topic I want to persuade you about. And the thesis of your speech does not have to be fancy. And the last thing you want it to be is unclear. Everybody should know, after your attention getter, why you're talking to us. What are you talking to us about? What are you hoping to get out of this speech? All right, so this is the very last portion of an introduction. It's called a preview statement. A preview statement lets the audience know what is going to be in this speech or how the speech will develop. It basically is a list of the main points of the speech. That's why I like to use this little map here, because a preview statement's a lot like Waze. Waze tells you where to turn before you're going to turn. So you get all the instructions in advance. I mean, could you imagine if you only got them literally the moment you needed them? You're driving down the road and it was like, oh, I need you to turn left right now. Well, you have to get like 3 lanes over. That's impossible, Waze. That's why it tells you in advance. This is what is happening. And then it keeps telling you over the course of your drive. And a preview statement tells you, here are going to be the 3 main points. And then a transition statement tells you, as the speech is going, where we are in the speech, right? So it keeps telling you, here are the parts of the speech that I just did, and here's the part that is coming up next. So you should think of your preview as like a little oral outline in the speech, right? In this speech, I will tell you 3 things, right? Thing A, thing B, thing C. This should sound familiar because you literally did this in your introduction speech. You told us the 3 things before you told us about the depth of each 3 thing. Same thing here, same concept, right? You're going to tell us the 3 main points of your speech. So in this speech, I will talk to you about how radishes grow, why radishes grow, and where radishes grow, right? 1, 2, 3. Right? It lets us know the main points of the speech. And it should be very simple, very clear. It should not be confusing. These are the 3 parts of my speech today, and they should be in the exact order that you're going to cover them in. Okay, so when you put the outline together, you can see we already did the body of the speech, right? We did that earlier. So main points, subpoints with your reasoning and your research, subpoint, reasoning, research, transition statement, right? Main point 2, subpoint, transition, main point 3, subpoint, transition. And now we go back and we add the introduction. And so we have attention getting strategy. We have a reason to listen to the speech. That connects us to our thesis statement, which is our very specific purpose, plus our topic. Then we preview our main points. Here are the main points of the speech. And then we transition into main point 1. Now let's talk about main point 1. All right, and that's what it looks like in outline form to do the introduction and head into the body of the speech.